COVID-19 Health Summit.
Partnered by LIC. हर पल आपके साथ।
Hello and welcome. I am Shobhit Mittal and you are watching COVID-19 Health Summit on WION, and our focus on this session will be on mental health. Can mental health become the next pandemic? Now, never before in modern human history has the entire world been shut down as it has during the coronavirus pandemic. Now, this is an unprecedented global crisis affecting you, me, and almost every other human being on this planet. COVID-19, the disease caused by a new strain of the coronavirus, is frightening because it is spreading fast and there is currently no vaccine or preventative treatment for this disease. The global killer is a virus we cannot see, but is that virus our only worry? What about mental health, anxiety, and a fear of the unknown? What impact will unemployment and lockdowns have on business owners, professionals, and the daily wage earners? What about isolation and loneliness caused by the lockdowns? Experts believe it will lead to mental health issues in the long term and even a rise in cases of suicides. Domestic abuse, drug abuse, insomnia, chronic health disorders have the potential to leave their mark on each household and society at large. Their impact may be felt long after the world gets a vaccine. So how do we guard ourselves against such dangers and such dangerous side effects of this pandemic? How do we emerge stronger from this crisis? Or will mental illness become the next pandemic? Helping us answer all these questions today are the following guests. We have an elite panel joining us with us. Dr. Nimesh G. Desai, he is the director of the Institute of Human Behavior and Allied Sciences. Also joining us is Vikram Harshad Patel, a psychiatrist. Also joining us is Professor Jonathan D. Hupert from the Department of Psychology, the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and Shubhang Arora, Executive Director of the Yashoda Group of Super Specialty Hospitals. Let me begin by coming to you, Dr. Nimesh Desai first. You are from the Institute of Human Behavior and Allied Sciences. My first question to you is it right to say that the side effects of the pandemic on mental health could potentially be as dangerous for a society as the virus itself, and is enough attention being given to spread awareness on these issues?
Sure, absolutely. There can be no doubt about the fact that amongst the many after effects, short-term and long-term, of this pandemic, one of them is going to be on mental health, the larger concept of mental health. There might not be, as science will tell us, an epidemic of the mental illnesses, but surely mental health issues, soft and hard, direct, indirect effect of the epidemic and the economic issues related to that is going to be a major concern. This is the opportunity for all of us to make sure that mental health, which till now has not had very good recognition and emphasis, especially in the low and middle income countries, actually gets strengthened. So it's an opportunity for us to examine our mental health systems and strengthen the response.
Absolutely right, Dr. Nimesh. Now, coming to you, Professor Jonathan, uncertainties and hopelessness has driven people to extreme measures. People all over the world have hoarded unnecessary quantities of basic household goods, resulting in shortages for the needy. People have walked hundreds of kilometers just to reach home due to uncertainties in urban centers. Essential workers have been harassed for being potentially exposed to the virus. Now, there are hundreds of examples. People are doing things they would never have done otherwise, isn't it?
The response during a threat like this is, and great uncertainty, leads to people doing all sorts of types of acts to try to protect themselves and their loved ones in different ways. Clearly, some of those things are less necessary and not necessarily rational, like we saw throughout the West, many people hoarding toilet paper at the beginning, and now it's very clear that that was completely unnecessary. But people try to respond to obtain some kind of control when there's so much uncertainty.
Yes, absolutely right. And these are just a few examples, isn't it? Coming to you, Vikram, clearly everyone is stressed, whether it is a fear of contracting the virus, the fear for the well-being of a loved one, or the uncertainty about finances. Are the jobs secure? Will their businesses survive the lockdown? Will they be able to pay their employees? Is it safe to go to the store to buy food and medicine? Almost every household is facing some crisis or the other. So what are the first signs one should look out for? What is an indication that someone we love may be suffering from a mental health crisis and may be in need of help?
So I think, everything you said really shows that all of us in the current times are being affected by extraordinary stressors. And I would first of all say we should be careful not to medicalize these reactions. Anxiety, distress, feeling fearful about the future, feeling even hopeless about the future, given all the circumstances you described, could almost be seen as a completely normal reaction of the human mind to an extraordinary situation. That said, of course, there are certain groups of people who may go on in such stressful circumstances to develop a significant mental health problem. And in my mind, there are some broad criteria that will help us distinguish those people who need additional support or help. That includes how long, that is to say, how persistent this distress is, how much it is affecting their daily lives, and sometimes the more serious kinds of phenomena that might be associated with mental health problems. For example, persistent ideas of ending one's life.
Yeah, that is an issue, and we will focus on that just a little bit later in the show. But coming to you, Shubhang, what are the healthy ways to cope with stress? That's the big question, isn't it? Because clearly everyone is feeling some sort of stress. How do we increase awareness about this? How do we remove the stigma that surrounds mental health so that those suffering don't shy away from seeking professionally?
Well, I think now more than ever is the time that people really focus on their health, the health of their loved ones, because we're in times of social isolation. People might feel alone, people might feel helpless without their friends or family. So I think, we must provide support, especially to people, vulnerable people, children, elderly, and encourage healthy activities like yoga, meditation, some form of exercise. I think having a positive mindset is essential at this point in time.
Yeah, but Shubhang, the big question is there taboo associated with mental health issues?
Well, certainly I can say, as one other panelist mentioned, that in developing countries and underdeveloping countries, certainly there is a sort of social stigma associated with seeking professional counseling or professional help when it comes to mental health issues, be it anxiety, depression, or any other sort of related conditions. But this can be a point in time where we move on with it. We move forward and embrace people and help people sort of come out of the closet who may be suffering within, and provide support to them and encourage people to seek support if we feel someone is under stress, if we feel someone is under pressure.
Absolutely right. And Professor Jonathan, coming back to you, people have been locked together for months. They can't step out for jobs or chores, while families have got an opportunity to spend time together and connect. It has also led to a rise in domestic abuse cases, isn't it? In fact, the UN recently urged nations to put women's safety first in this pandemic. In India, National Legal Services Authority released data which showed that almost a sharp increase in reported domestic violence cases in India, and I'm sure the situation is the same the world over.
That's indeed the case. That on the one hand, this pandemic has created a lot of isolation, but it's not individual isolation, it's also isolation within family units, where families are stuck together in ways that they're not typically used to being. And so we see a kind of magnification of the stressors within the family dynamics, leading to, unfortunately, a significant rise in domestic abuse, child abuse, as well as other types of problems within the family. And so it's really important that people find ways to manage their stress and also to have some time separate as well as together, even within the confines of the restrictions that exist in all the areas throughout the world.
Yeah, but Nimesh, I'd like to ask you a follow-up question. Is it because the victims and the abusers have been trapped in the same household? They can't step out. They can't go out to buy groceries. They can't go out to visit their relatives or friends. Is that one of the main reasons in the rise in domestic violence cases?
Sure it is. The lockdown itself period and even the unlock period, which is progressing slowly, has actually effect of the nature that you are saying, at least at 3 levels. One is, of course, the treatment of those who were already living with mental illness, who were already on services or who were hidden in the treatment gap. So the first task that the relatives, family, society and we as mental systems have is to ensure continuity of treatment for those who were in service, mental service delivery mechanism. The second is the prevention aspect. By being in together, issues of domestic violence, depression with suicide risk and things of that nature, if identified early, can be prevented. And the third is, of course, what you have been referring to, promotion of positive mental health, which will then reduce the possibility of detecting disorders. And so treatment services continued, prevention and early identification and promoting positive mental health are the 3 levels at which you need to have both formal and semi-formal mechanisms in place. But the most important part, as you have said once or twice, is the stigma associated with it. Let's face the fact that one knows of any number of counseling services which have sprung up in good faith that really do not have too many takers. And we have ourselves had direct experience of this and many other agencies have had. And so we also needs to balance the service offered with removal of the stigma and the social attitudes being improved. If nothing else, this mental health effect of this pandemic should at least train humanity all across the globe to see that there is no shame or stigma in seeking help. What was referred to earlier as normalization of the distressing experience needs to be at least crystallized to this one lesson. Western countries have done that a while ago for different reasons. Large parts of the world still carry stigma about seeking help. And so the opportunity, as you have referred to, is to reduce the stigma, see that the stigma around mental health becomes less, if not zero.
Right. Vikram, coming to you, the human behavior and, sciences is a very interesting issue, isn't it? Especially the focus is on human behavior and behavioral sciences in this pandemic. A Kaiser Family Foundation survey has indicated that 45% of adults in America reported that their mental health has been negatively impacted due to worry and stress over the coronavirus. That's in the last few months only. So in America, almost half the people surveyed reported an impact on their mental well-being. Are the numbers similar in India? Do you expect the numbers to be similar in India? If so, what are the behavioral changes that we should keep an eye out for? The first indicators that someone may need guidance.
So, in fact, there are surveys from India, very similar to the American surveys. They, of course, have the limitation that these are online surveys and therefore they only reach a subsection of our population. But notwithstanding that limitation, they report also very similarly very high rates. In fact, in some surveys, as many as 75% of people report a range of distressing mental health experiences. In fact, there's a set of surveys that I was recently sent, which was with migrant workers who were returning home. And that was interesting because that was not an online survey. It was directly collected by frontline workers in the villages. And that also reported, very high rates. But as I said earlier, it's extremely important not to read these reactions as being the sign of an illness. They're certainly distressing. They require some degree of intervention, a lot of which is around self-care and support. But a minority of these individuals potentially could go on to develop more significant mental health problems that then need a clinical intervention.
Clearly, but Shubhang, what impact has lockdown-induced isolations and loneliness had on people? Will the isolation lead to a rise in cases of self-harm and suicides? In fact, in America, once again, a federal emergency hotline for people in emotional distress registered a 1,000% increase in calls in April 2020 compared to the same period last year. A non-profit Meadows Health Institute policy says that if unemployment rises by 20 percentage points to levels recorded during the 1930s Great Depression, suicides could actually increase by 18,000 and overdose deaths may increase by as much as 22,000. These are alarming numbers.
Well, human beings are social animals, and it is our instinct, it is natural for us, it is natural to us to meet people, to go out, to explore the world. And what is going on is unprecedented in our lifetime. So, there has, as you mentioned, the increase in substance abuse, increase in severe mental illnesses that are developing in people with underlying conditions who had some sort of condition beforehand. It is getting much worse. Healthy people are turning to drugs, to antidepressants. So there's so much uncertainty for people in their personal life, whether they keep their job, whether they themselves will be safe, whether their friends and families, they care about their parents who might be elderly and more vulnerable to this disease, or their children. We have come through almost 4 months of this, 5 months now, that WHO declared the novel coronavirus as a global pandemic. I am optimistic, however, that things are getting better. The rates of deaths for patients, it has plummeted. I really do hope and pray that a vaccine is on the horizon so that we can really sort of beat this disease and come out stronger than before.
Yeah, we all hope that a vaccine comes soon, but just a couple of days back, the World Health Organization says that a vaccine may not be there for general use before the first half of 2021. So we still have a long way to go till we have a vaccine. And the question is, how do we deal with mental health issues till the time we get a vaccine? Because the world and everyone will continue to remain under stress if the situation doesn't change till the time we have a vaccine. Now, Nimesh, coming back to you again about this question of isolation and loneliness. So many people around the world, millions of people around the world will be isolated because of the lockdown measures. How does an individual deal with such an isolation? Because like one of our panelists said, humans are social animals. How does one deal with isolation?
I'd like to connect that with what you discussed last. While waiting for the biological vaccine or vaccines, and even after we get that, the immediate and the short-term and the long-term need for human race right now is for a set of behavioral vaccines. One, for individuals not to let the negative effects of this lockdown or the economic slowdown affect too much so as to lead to serious problems. Two, increase the semi-formal and the informal support systems that families and communities have, especially that strong in Afro-Asian context. Three, there will have to be the behavioral vaccine to see that those who are vulnerable are actually taken care of, and those with pre-existing medical or mental health problems who are most vulnerable are taken care of very in advance and in time and on continuous basis. The global figures have been 1 in 4 diagnosable mental health problems.
Okay.
The American figures are anywhere between 40 to 50%. India and South Asia has a much lower figure, 10 to 12% at best. So Indian society, for persons living with mental illness, even those who are vulnerable, till now it would seem, and all the disaster research experience till now would show that what Vikram is saying is very valid. We need more psychological and mental health support and services than pure psychiatric services.
Right. Vikram, now one incident that has really thrown the light and spotlight on mental health issues is that of the tragic demise of very talented and popular actor Sushant Singh Rajput, isn't it? Now, just because it happened during the pandemic has also given more importance to taking care about one's mental health. So, what do we need to do to spread more awareness about taking care of oneself and reaching out if you really need support?
Yeah, so I think that was one more example of how mental health found a place in our front headlines. And I think, one of the interesting things in the last 6 months has been how frequently mental health has been on our headlines. In fact, if you take away all the specific virus-related reporting, the next most common kind of reporting related to health has been mental health. And that's quite a unique issue, actually. And I agree with Nimesh, there's a lot of stigma, but I think actually the last 6 months I've seen a remarkable reduction in stigma if you can measure that in terms of how much conversation there is in the public about mental health. I think the suicide of Sushant Singh Rajput really reminded us that these stressors that we are facing can actually trigger very extreme forms of mental health distress, ultimately culminating in a suicide attempt, particularly when there's multiple factors that already also existed before, in fact, the corona pandemic, as it appears it was in his case. But I want to say one more thing. These celebrity suicides and the testimonies about mental illness, I think they're very important for us to address stigma. But it's also equally important not for us to, therefore, perpetuate the myth that mental health problems are rich people's problems. Because, that's been a very frequent belief in our society that, really it is the wealthy, the affluent, the westernized, the urbanized who have mental health problems, whereas the masses don't. And in fact, that has in part explained why the public healthcare system has really under-resourced mental health care, particularly in rural areas and for the poor. So I think it's important to remember that actually it is the poor, the dispossessed and the marginalized who bear the greatest burden of mental health problems. And that is the community that is least likely to be able to access quality care.
Right, you are right, and absolutely the marginalized section of the society may not have access to such help that, the privileged people have. Jonathan, one final question to you. Adults are clearly feeling the stress, but what about children? Children face a really uncertain future due to this pandemic. Save the Children says almost 10 million children may never return to school due to the economic impact of the pandemic. They may be forced into child labor or child marriages. How do we take care of our children?
I think it's an essential point that really the economic impact of the pandemic is going to have long-term mental health consequences as much as the pandemic itself, just from the virus. And that's all the more so in children who are less affected by the virus itself, but will be even more affected by the long-term economic consequences. And I think that we need to start locally, even within families, that families can speak to their children about the stressors that the children are feeling that they don't know how to put words to, and then from a more systemic perspective, to try to provide resources throughout the world to children, so that we know that one of the best predictors of positive progress in mental health is education, right. And so it's essential that such services are prioritized even in difficult economic times.
Right. So we have established that there are serious mental health concerns for all of us. It's due to various situations that have risen up due to the pandemic, the fear of getting infected, the fear of your loved ones getting infected. No one is safe. Children are not safe. Even families are not safe in case of abusive relationships. So one final answer from all of you, short answers please. Mental health could be the next pandemic. What is the solution? What are the signs that we need to look out for? And what's the solution? How does one take care of themselves? Jonathan, very quickly, I'll start with you.
I think awareness and normalization, knowing that it's okay to feel distressed, it's okay to seek help. And that there's help online, there's help locally, there's help in many different ways, and that it doesn't mean you're weak or that you're flawed, that it's the norm for people to feel stressed, so that many people, almost the majority of people at some time in their life will experience some type of depression, anxiety, or other types of mental health issues.
So I want to turn to my piece of advice for those who finance and provide healthcare. I think this is a historic opportunity to invest in and transform the world's mental health care systems. But I want to say that, of course, we need more money, but we also need to spend it wisely, guided by the best science. And for that, mental health care must embrace the diversity of experiences and strategies which work, which we've talked about on this show, well beyond the narrow confines of traditional medicine with its emphasis on doctors, diagnoses, and drugs.
Dr. Nimesh.
Take care of the vulnerable. Make sure that we can remain positive. As was said, invest more in mental health, but invest wisely. Most importantly, the larger social global reality about mental health needs to be less stigmatized, more forward-looking, and more positive.
I'd like to thank all our panelists, Dr. Nimesh, Vikram, Professor Jonathan, and Shubhang for joining us on this very important session. Mental health could be the next pandemic. During this crisis, now more than ever, it is crucial to focus on yourself. Take care of your physical health, exercise and be fit, but don't forget that taking care of your mental well-being is equally important. Eat healthy, get plenty of sleep, watch things that make you happy and spark your interest, connect with your loved ones, and if it helps, even meditate. But what's most important, if you do feel that it's getting too much to handle, then reach out and seek help. The only way to beat this pandemic is by unity and to make yourself stronger. Take care.
COVID-19 Health Summit.
Partnered by LIC. Arbal Apke Saath.